Consider, if you will, the plight of James Parker, a struggling writer about to inherit more than just a cabin in the woods. He's about to step into a story where the line between author and character blurs, and where the phrase ghostwriter takes on a whole new meaning. Mr. Parker is about to discover that in this particular cabin, writer's block is the least of his problems.
The winding mountain road seemed to go on forever, each turn revealing more dense forest and less civilization. James Parker, a struggling writer of 31, gripped the steering wheel of his beat-up sedan, knuckles white with anticipation. The lawyer's words echoed in his mind.
Your grandmother left you everything, Mr. Parker. The cabin, the land, and all its contents.
What am I even doing here? I barely knew her.
As James rounded the final bend, the trees parted like a curtain, revealing a small clearing. There stood his inheritance, a weathered log cabin that seemed to have grown from the very earth beneath it. James parked and stepped out, stretching his legs after the long drive. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and something else, something old and musty, like forgotten books.
Well, Grandma, let's see what you left me.
James suddenly feels very isolated. He pulls out his cell phone.
No signal. Of course. Perfect setting for a horror movie, right?
The key slid into the lock with a reluctant groan. James pushed open the door, disturbing years of settled dust. He coughed, waving his hand in front of his face. Inside, the cabin was a time capsule. Faded photographs lined the walls, faces of strangers who shared his blood staring back at him. Bookshelves groaned under the weight of countless volumes, their spines a rainbow of faded colors.
I've never seen so many books in one place.
He wandered through the cabin, fingertips trailing along the book-laden shelves. In the kitchen, he found a note taped to an ancient refrigerator.
What's this? A note from Grandma. James, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But I've left you everything you need. The story must be finished. You'll understand soon. Love, Grandma. What the? I thought there was no signal.
James, are you at Grandma's cabin yet?
Emma? Yeah, I just got here. This place is strange.
Listen, I found something in Mom's old things. Grandma's last letter to her. It says...
Emma, you're breaking up.
James, be careful. Grandma's typewriter.
Emma? Damn it! Hello? Hello?
Puzzled, James continued his exploration. In the study, bathed in the soft glow of fading sunlight, an old typewriter sat on a heavy oak desk. James approached, drawn by an inexplicable pull.
Huh? I didn't notice paper in the typewriter before.
A yellowed page protruded from the typewriter, words marching across its surface in faded ink. James leaned closer, eyes widening as he read.
The cabin stood alone in the clearing, a weathered sentinel amidst the whispering pines. Thomas Parker, a struggling writer of 31, pulled up in his beat-up sedan.
James' breath caught in his throat. The story mirrored his arrival, but with a different name, his grandmother's unfinished tale. He read on, heart pounding as the narrative unfolded.
A writer, trapped in a cabin, reality bending around him. This is incredible. It's like she knew.
Feeling a surge of inspiration, James sat at the desk. His fingers found the typewriter's keys, cool and inviting. He began to type, continuing where his grandmother had left off. As James wrote, the cabin seemed to come alive around him. A cool breeze rustled papers as he described an open window. Shadows lengthened as he typed about the setting sun.
It's just my imagination. Has to be.
But doubt gnawed at him. He wrote of a mysterious figure at the window, and a shadow darted past in his peripheral vision. James jumped, heart racing.
Hello, is anyone there?
Lightning illuminated the room, and in that brief flash, James saw something that made his blood run cold. At the bottom of his grandmother's manuscript, in her familiar handwriting, was his name.
James Parker. Oh God, no.
The typewriter began to move on its own, keys clacking out a chilling message. And so, James Parker realized the terrible truth. He was not the author, but the character. A figment of imagination, trapped in an unfinished story, forever seeking an ending that would never come.
Please, I'm real. I have to be real.
But his protest faded into the ether, lost in the pages of a story that had always been his prison. The cabin stood alone in the clearing, a weathered sentinel amidst the whispering pines, waiting for the next chapter to begin. Days passed, or perhaps it was weeks. Time had lost all meaning for James. He sat at the typewriter, endlessly typing, trying to write his way out of his fictional existence.
If I can just find the right words, the right ending.
But every story he started looped back to the cabin, to the typewriter, to his grandmother's unfinished manuscript. The words on the page began to blur, reality and fiction merging into an indistinguishable haze. One day or night, it was impossible to tell anymore. James made a discovery. Hidden in the back of a drawer, he found a leather-bound journal, his grandmother's diary.
September 15th, 1985. I've done it. I've found a way to live forever. The story is the key. As long as it remains unfinished, I will endure. But the price... oh, the price is steep. I must create characters, breathe life into them, only to trap them in an endless cycle. My own flesh and blood, written into existence, doomed to relive this nightmare. Forgive me, my creations, my children. Your suffering ensures my immortality.
James read on, horror growing with each page. His grandmother had stumbled upon some eldritch truth, a way to trap life itself within the pages of a story. But it required a sacrifice, a life freely given, a soul willingly trapped.
She created me, wrote me into existence, knowing I'd come here, knowing I'd continue the story.
And now you understand, my dear James. The story must continue. It must always continue. For in its endless pages I live on. And so will you when the time comes to pass the torch.
The typewriter began to clack again, unbidden.
No, I won't do it. I won't trap another soul like this.
James stood, grabbed the manuscript in his grandmother's journal. He moved to the fireplace, matches in hand.
It ends here, Grandma. No more stories, no more prisons. I may be your creation, Grandma, but my choices are my own, and I choose to end this cycle.
With a final, decisive motion, James dropped the pages into the fire. The effect was immediate and terrifying. As the pages curled and blackened in the flames, James felt a curious sensation. His edges seemed to blur, his very being growing faint.
I may not have been real, but I can make a real choice. This ends now, Grandma. No more stories, no more victims.
The fire consumed the pages, the story, and with it, James himself. As the last ember died, the cabin stood silent. On the desk, the typewriter sat, a page waiting. For a moment, all was still. But in the shadows, something stirred, a new presence, drawn by the promise of unwritten pages and untold stories. The cycle may have been broken, but in this cabin, in this realm of words and imagination, nothing truly ends. It merely begins anew.
James Parker came to these woods seeking an inheritance, but found instead a legacy of words that consumed him. A cautionary tale for aspiring authors everywhere. Be careful what you write, for in the library of the mind, some books refuse to be closed, and some stories have a life of their own. For in this cabin, nestled in the whisper of pines, the page is always blank, the story always unfinished, waiting for the next unwitting author to type those fateful words. Once upon a time. Subscribe to Bedtime Shadows so you don't miss next week's enchanting chapter, Shadows of Guilt, where we'll discover that some childhood crimes never fade away. They just wait in the shadows until it's time to collect. What shadows are you running from? We hope you enjoyed this chapter. If you want to support us, see the options below. You can buy me a coffee or become a Patreon supporter. If you join the channel and become a member, you'll get access to unreleased videos, as do Patreon members.